Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. I hope you're having a fabulous festive period. Christmas Day is done. We're now into Boxing Day, but Christmas still carries on. I think for the next couple of days it's still effectively Christmas. So I hope you're enjoying your time off and your time at home and your time with your families and friends in front of the box. Let's talk about Doctor Who then. I'm grateful to Stephen Moffat, who wrote this year's Christmas Doctor Who special, Joy to the World, which aired yesterday, Christmas Day, at 5:10 for an hour. Because as a Doctor Who fan, sometimes, not often, you get asked when you're in polite company or in company where one or more Doctor Who fans are gathered, what's your favourite Doctor Who stories? What's your least favourite Doctor Who stories? Favourites are easy depending on your age. My favourites are things like Inferno from John Pertwee's period and Seeds of Doom from Tom Baker's. And there are loads of episodes from the first 5 years of modern Doctor Who, which are right up there with the best of Doctor Who. When it comes to your worst favourites or least favourites, that's also difficult because if you look at the classic series, you'd often have good stories let down by poor production, poor special effects. I'm thinking of things like Underworld, Horns of Nimon from late Tom Baker period. Decent solid stories that look ropey. When you talk about modern Doctor Who, bad stories are easier to locate because most of them, as far as I'm concerned, are lodged very squarely in that 2010-2016 period where Stephen Moffat was in charge of Doctor Who. There are some howlers, absolute howlers in that era. And I apologise to anybody out there watching this who's a staunch fan of Stephen Moffat and think he's a hugely imaginative, fantastic writer. His style of writing, his style of Doctor Who doesn't work for me. So I'm grateful to last night's Joy to the World episode written by Stephen Moffat because this finally gives me an answer to the question, what's the worst Doctor Who episode ever made? So here we are, the Doctor Who was back last night for a 60-minute special, Joy to the World, written by Stephen Moffat, and when I heard that he was writing this Christmas special, my will to live faded just a little bit earlier this year because I'm not a fan of his writing. I'm not going to go into great detail about why I don't like his writing because I've done this in the past on this channel and particularly in the pages of Starburst magazine over the years. I just don't chime with his interpretation of Doctor Who. His fairy tale ethos, his obsession with tiny, I'm not going to say it, his obsession with the contours and complexes and paradoxes of time travel and how time can bend itself and twist itself around. And I think it's a valid point to explore the time travel nature of Doctor Who because Doctor Who has always done that in a fairly linear fashion. The Doctor will travel back in time to a period in Earth's history, whether it's the gunfight at the OK Corral around the time of the Battle of Hastings, Victorian era. But they're very straightforward stories about travelling back in time or travelling forward in time, having an adventure and then buggering off. Moffat, however, is more concerned with the twists and turns and time looping back on itself and time repeating itself and things happening which are predicated on things which haven't happened and all this arcane sort of stuff. He loves that sort of stuff and that's absolutely fine. But he keeps on doing it. He keeps on doing the same things. And I've always said, and I will continue to say, that his time on Doctor Who, when he was the showrunner, was predicated on 2 or 3 repeated memes, repeated ideas. They were generally these sort of circuitous time travel stories that revolved around loops in time and people waiting for vast periods of time for things to happen so they could catch up with them. It's happened again and again and again in his time. And misunderstood monsters, creatures that were monsters, but they're misunderstood. They're just trying to get back home. They're trying to be loved. Malfunctioning technology that's designed to help humanity, which has malfunctioned and is actually endangering humanity. But let's put it right because it's just malfunctioning. He doesn't really have a sense of that essential thread of Doctor Who, which is about the fight between good, the Doctor, and bad, evil, aliens, monsters, mad scientists. He doesn't do any of that. Whether that's through a lack of interest in that sort of storytelling or, I suspect, an inability to write that sort of storytelling. Stephen Moffat has a history as a comedy writer. He started off his career writing sitcom scripts, and that's all about jokes and quippy dialogue and people snipping and sniping back and forth, and he's brought that into Doctor Who. He always has. He's not an action writer. He's not an adventure writer. He doesn't write action scenes. He doesn't have a feel for pulse-pounding adventure and excitement. He doesn't have any sense of propulsion in his stories. Anyway, having said I'm not going to go into a rant about why I don't like Stephen Moffat, I've just done a rant about why I don't like Stephen Moffat. When I heard that he was doing this episode, having done the deeply dreary Boom in the last series, which was, again, a static chamber piece with lots of dialogue and barely any movement, I heard that he was back to write this Christmas episode, primarily apparently because Russell T Davies didn't have time to do it, and he asked Stephen Moffat to do it. And Stephen Moffat came up with this concept, which came to fruition in this episode, which aired last night, Joy to the World. It was terrible. Frankly, I thought it was awful. I was going to do this video last night on Christmas night. I was going to slip away for an hour and do a video and try and upload it. But I forfeited the likes. I forfeited the potential new subscribers because I genuinely felt not disappointed, but actually a bit angry that this episode had been made and broadcast and was so bad. And I say so bad in a purely subjective manner. There may be people out there who thought it was beautiful and heartfelt and touching. And I could see that it was trying to do all those things and be all those things. But it left me completely cold because it seemed to me very much by the numbers sentimentality. He was trying to tweak those dials on people to make people sad and upset and emotional and bring out those resonances in the characters and what was happening. None of it worked for me at all because it was too twee, it was too drab, it was dreary, nothing of any interest happened, and it was all built around, again, this time looping back on itself and this, again, regurgitated bit about the Doctor having to wait a whole year in this hotel to catch up with himself. And I just, not this. Like, at least it wasn't as bad as having him punching a wall for 50 billion years or something, which he did in the incredibly overrated Heaven Sent episode a few years ago. Anyway, this episode purported to co-star Nicola Coughlan from Derry Girl. She wasn't in it a lot, should we say. Other characters appeared in it more. The episode starts with this incredibly frustrating scene of the Doctor travelling to different eras, trying to deliver a pumpkin latte and a ham and cheese toastie to people in wartime Manchester, the base camp at Everest in the 50s, the Orient Express, and it all had that sort of slightly grating Stephen Moffat. This is funny. And we saw this, of course, back in the summer. This clip was released in the summer at Comic-Con, I think. So I wasn't looking forward to the episode. But as the weeks drew nearer, bits came out about it. I thought, actually, there's some potential here. We saw a clip of the dinosaur. You can't go wrong with the dinosaur. And the idea of a time hotel, which has doorways or portals to various eras in time. As I think the character of Trev, played by Joel Fry, explained. It was Christmas everywhere all at once. You could travel anywhere in time through these portals. It's a very Moffat idea of the complete and permanent accessibility of all time periods. And it starts off with this character Joy booking into a hotel. She's obviously sad and upset. She's on her own. Silurian appears for no apparently discernible reason. He's the manager of the hotel in the future. And he's chained to this briefcase. The briefcase is the plot, the point of the plot in a way. Apparently it's been created by Villain Guard, which is something which has been referenced in previous Moffat episodes. Now this again slightly annoyed me because in the plot précis for the episode there are references to an old enemy of the Doctor's who's lurking in the background. Well no, Villain Guard has been mentioned in 2 episodes. It's not exactly the Daleks, is it? It's not even the Nymons. It's just this vague, totally forgettable name of this weapons manufacturing organisation that the Doctor has had off-screen dealings with in the past. So it's not really an old enemy, is it? Anyway, this organisation has created a star seed which needs to detonate a star to create itself as a weaponized star. So that's the threat in the episode. And this thing is chained to people's hands. It moves from one person to another and then they apparently die. And the whole point of the episode is the Doctor trying to find out where he can dump this thing so it will not cause damage, not destroy the world. And that's pretty much all it is. It's running back and forth through these different portals. And the first 10 minutes, I thought, well, this is not disagreeable. It's okay. It's got that irritating Moffat dialogue, but the set design was fantastic. The hotel looked brilliant. This huge set for the hotel. Nicola Coughlan seemed perfectly pleasant for the amount she was in it. Ncuti Gatwa was as energetic as ever. But the thing fell apart when you had the the plot point where the Doctor has to stay in the hotel for a year to catch up with himself. And this slightly soppy, sappy pseudo-romance with Anita, the girl who works behind the reception at the hotel. And the Doctor is adrift from the TARDIS, and he's living as a human, working around the hotel, and he's buying model TARDIS figures. And the whole story just stopped for 20 minutes while it played out this little vignette about the Doctor being humanised and this little relationship he had with Anita. And I was watching this thinking, this is just... nothing's going on here. This is just empty words. Then they go back to the plot and they chuck in a dinosaur because they suddenly realise, oh, nothing's actually happened in this. And it all ends up with an incredibly and ludicrously inappropriate, I think, suggestion that the star thing that explodes is the Star of Bethlehem at the time of the Nativity. And you even get a scene where the Doctor realises what's happened, and he's standing at the cave entrance that's led back to this doorway, and you see the three wise men, you see the star, and of course, because it's a Moffat episode, the characters who died in the episode, they didn't die, they were uploaded as digital representations of themselves, because nobody dies. I just thought this was awful. Now, when I finished watching it, as I said, I was going to record my video, and it would have been an angry ranting video in the style of R.I.P. Doctor Who is dead. I don't believe in that sort of criticism. I tried to be constructive, and I've tried to explain here why I didn't like the episode. I didn't like anything about the episode, really. Even the first 10 minutes, which I thought were okay, collapsed under the weight of the following 50 minutes of twee twaddle. And this is the thing about the episode. It was mawkish, it was twee, horribly sentimental. And I know it will touch a lot of people who can identify with Joy's story, her backstory, which reflected the pandemic where her mother passed away on her own in hospital because Joy could only watch her on an iPad. And yeah, I understand that that will resonate with a lot of people who went through a lot of terrible times during the pandemic. But it was a bit heavy-handed. And the bit where she sort of falls into the Doctor's arms and she says, my mother died in hospital on her own while they were partying in fridges and party cake. And you saw that was a couple of years ago now. We've moved on from that. Do we really need to sort of reference that again now? It's not exactly Doctor Who being topical. People criticise Doctor Who for dealing with contemporary issues and soapboxing, but if you're going to do it, let's not soapbox something that happened 4 years ago. I just found it was clumsy, ugly sentimentality. I view Doctor Who as an action-adventure series, and it can touch on issues, and it always has. Back in the 70s, it was dealing with issues, but it was never like this. It was never sickly, it was never cloying. Doctor Who can deal with issues, and it does deal with issues, and it does it generally much more subtly than this, and it used to do it in the 70s, but this was just, a treacly, Christmassy. I mean, again, I say Christmassy, it was only Christmassy in that it was set at Christmas, nothing much about it was Christmassy otherwise, which has been often the case with those Doctor Who Christmas episodes. And as I said in my video about Doctor Who Christmas episodes are very different to typical Doctor Who episodes because they hope to reach out to an audience that don't normally watch the show. So they're not necessarily typical of the series. That's the way it has been pretty much since the second Doctor Who Christmas special. But I felt that this was pretty much without merit at all, really. It was very well made. I mean, yeah, it was well made. The dinosaur effects look great. But I can't cherry pick one or two things out of a poor story. And I just felt it was a poor story, not worth telling. And it just shows, as I've always said, that Stephen Moffat isn't the right person to write Doctor Who because his imagination isn't wild enough. He's very much focused on several core ideas, the time travel motifs, and nobody dying, and everything being sweet. And even his non-Christmas episodes were very much like this. So anyway, I thought this was rubbish, really. This is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to be constructive about it. I don't want to just come on and say, that was crap, because that would be a very short video, and it wouldn't really offer you anything. But I just thought it was very, very disappointing. And bearing in mind that my hopes weren't that high anyway, but I had allowed them to get a bit higher in the last 2 weeks, and I thought, well, this might have a bit more to it, but ultimately it didn't. There was nothing to it. Very thin, very talky, no adventure, no sense of excitement. You had a scene where the Doctor climbs on top of the Orient Express to do something, but you don't see him get up there, you don't see him get back in again. There's just a effect shot of him on there, spinning a rope round, and, that ain't exciting. I'm sorry, that just ain't exciting. In terms of how the episode went down, let's talk about ratings, because it's something I like to do when I talk about Doctor Who. This had an overnight viewing figure of 4.11 million viewers. In a ratings environment that we've discussed before, people will say, oh, but Voyage of the Damned had 16 million viewers. Yeah, that was 15 years ago. We don't make those comparisons. Viewing figures are down across the board, and they were down across the board this year in terms of everything. Doctor Who's overnight figure last year was 4.73, so it's a lower overnight figure last year. The episode consolidated last year to 7.49 viewers. I suspect this will consolidate around the 6 million, I think, which represents an uptick from the end of the last series, which had a consolidated figure of 3.69 for Empire of Death in June. So it will represent an uptick, but that's purely a seasonal uptick because there are more viewers there, there's more people watching TV. You would expect a Doctor Who episode to do slightly better than typical season episodes, but it doesn't represent a huge high for Doctor Who viewing figures. The trend for Doctor Who's figures to be bumping along, in line with everything else bumping along downwards, continues. And in fact, I'm not disappointed that the figures are low because I don't think it deserved much more than this. It was an odd time slot, 5:10 anyway, which I think possibly reflects the BBC's view that it wasn't very good. I think Doctor Who used to command sort of 7 o'clock time slots at Christmas because he was, during that first Russell T Davies era, a centre point of the schedule. Now it isn't. Now it's just a Doctor Who episode which could go somewhere earlier on because you can't rely on it to bring in decent figures anymore. And I'm not agreeing with the narrative from the Angry Brigade that Doctor Who's figures are appalling and it's dying. Its figures are now falling in line with everything else on TV. And if you look at the top 10 viewing figures, it actually did okay in the charts. I think it's about number 6 or 7. Coronation Street isn't in the top 10. Now, bearing in mind that Coronation Street ITV soap is or was a TV juggernaut with 16, 17 million viewers. Apparently last night's big episode, which saw the exit of a major character, had about 2.4 million viewers. And EastEnders, which again, once a massive BBC behemoth, had similar figures really. I think one of its 2 episodes was below Doctor Who's. So Doctor Who is doing okay in terms of its viewing figures in the modern landscape, but it's not excelling anymore. Whereas I think in years past where viewing figures were declining, Doctor Who's staying quite strong. Now they're just falling in the same way that everything else is. So in terms of its performance, it did okay. But I think in terms of what it did creatively and what it did, purely for me, and this review is about what I thought of it, it may well have touched you emotionally in ways that it left me utterly cold. But I just do not like Stephen Moffat's style of Doctor Who. I've seen into his bag of tricks. There's nothing in there now. And he just wheels up the same things again and again. And this was just full of the same old stuff. So anyway, that's Joy to the World. It's on the iPlayer now if you want to see it. Good luck to you. It's an episode I will never watch again. And as I say, it does give me that answer now to that question. What's your least favourite Doctor Who? What's the worst Doctor Who? For me, it's this episode. This is worse than things like the Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe. This is worse even than Twice Upon a Time, that terrible last Peter Capaldi episode. It's just desperately bad. And I'm going to give it, as a rating, I'm going to give it 2 out of 10. That's all I can give it, 2 out of 10. And to give a Doctor Who episode a 2 out of 10 in the modern era is worrying. For me personally as a Doctor Who fan, because it suggests that something's not right. And that's possibly a whole other video about what's wrong with Doctor Who at the moment, where it's going, what its future might be. And I must talk, of course, about Shuji Gatwa leading his second Christmas special. He's fine, he's great, but there's so much wrong with the way the Doctor's now being interpreted as this over-humanised character. And a lot of it boils down to the costume thing. I talked about this before. The Doctor needs a recognisable look. I'm suggesting he needs a silhouette rather than a look. And I think the long caramel coat that he wears from time to time, that's a nice look. And he can wear different tops and t-shirts and trousers, that's fantastic. But you need something that makes him look different, that makes him look like an alien. He's not one of us. But when he's wandering around in t-shirts and trousers, you sort of think, well, he's just a bloke. He's just a bloke. There's nothing exceptional about him. And I'm not suggesting we go back to the costume look of Colin Baker as a clown. But if you look at John Pertwee and Tom Baker, they had a look, they had a silhouette, but that varied. John Pertwee particularly, with his flamboyant jackets and shirts. But the colours changed and the designs changed, and he'd wear cloaks, and that would all change within a certain type of wardrobe. Tom Baker too, very much defined by the multicoloured super-length scarf, but he had different jackets and different trousers and different boots, and the look varied. With Shooty Gatwa, there is no look, but he wears all sorts of, I'm going to call them absurd clothes. He is a clothes horse. You've seen him in photo shoots wearing all sorts of bizarre clothes. He looks ridiculous in a lot of them, in my opinion, because I'm very much a t-shirt and jeans or tracksuit bottoms type of guy these days. But he can wear anything, and they're capitalising on that. But I think he doesn't look like the Doctor. There was a clip at the end of Doctor Who Unleashed, which came out yesterday. That's the making of episode, which I'm not going to watch because I don't care about how they made this episode. But they had a clip of the first episode of the next series. He's back in kilts running around. And in the trailer for the next season, which incidentally I think looks good, he's again wearing tartan shirts and different... I want the Doctor to look like somebody different. I want him to come onto screen and say, that's the Doctor. As it is now, he's wearing, zip-up shirts. And it just looks like an ordinary bloke. And I think that detracts from the character and doesn't give Shooty Gatwa a proper chance to shine as the character, because he's too ordinary. And the Doctor should never be ordinary. Anyway, I've gone on for far too long. So that's my take on Joy to the World. I thought it was a rotten episode. And I'm just annoyed. And I was very annoyed last night, which is why I didn't do my video last night, because it would have been an angry rant, and I'd rather avoid that sort of thing. And I'm conscious that I think I've drifted into that a bit here. But I just thought it was a very poor Doctor Who episode. But I appreciate that there may well be people out there who felt some resonance and connection to the emotional beats, but I just felt that they were unsubtle, heavy-handed, clunky, clumsy, and engineered to sort of touch those emotional points. But it didn't work for me because, we've been here before, we've done all this before, and there was nothing in this episode that made me think, wow, Doctor Who's fantastic. But there was a lot here that made me think, wow, Doctor Who's in trouble. So anyway, that's me done on Joy to the World. I would be interested to hear what you think about it. Now, don't just post, it was shit, it was crap, because that's not going to get posted. Try to be constructive, why you liked it. If I'm not saying talk me round, but explain to me why you liked it. If you didn't like it, I'd like to hear why, rather than just, R.I.P. Doctor Who, it was crap. Not interested. So try to be constructive, try to be sensible, try to be adult about it, because that's what this channel's all about, really. It's not about anger and flame wars and so on. It's about having discussions, and I'd like to keep that going. And Doctor Who's always where things can veer off target sometimes. Anyway, that's me done. Hope you enjoyed the video more than you enjoyed the Doctor Who episode. Like and subscribe, of course. That's what you need to do if you're new here. Leave a comment. I will see you soon. I've got another Christmas themed video coming up, which is slightly unusual for this channel, but it's something I want to talk about. So I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the Christmas stuff.